All right, so I apologize ahead of time for all the background noises, and in some clips, the lack of normal noises. I have the manufacturing crew running 24/7 right now, making dust collection parts because we are slammed and they are noisy. I also apparently didn't turn on my mic for certain parts of this video, so I'm all over the place. Anyways, the task at hand. In preparation for another video entirely, I needed to clean up the edges of this chunk of ash, but there's a problem. That's not square. I want it to be square. How do we make it square? Now, if you are new to hand planes, you might be tempted to just reach back here and adjust this lever. This lever skews the blade and assembly left and right, and it would make sense just to skew that one way or another and get back to work. But don't do it. Now, I'll tell you why here in just a second, but first, let's look at when that lever should be used. So let's say that I just sharpened the blade on this plane and I'm getting it all put back together. The first thing I do is set it on its heel with the sole facing away from me, and I sight down the length of it. And what I'm looking at is the skew of the blade. I lower the blade until the lowest point starts to disappear. Then I push that lever towards the high side and I try to level it out. Then I'll lower that blade a little more, and I'll just keep going through these steps as low as I can go before the blade is fully retracted. You'll notice there's a white piece of paper on the bench underneath it, and that's for contrast. That really helps to be able to see what's going on. Anyway, by eye, it may very well look like the edge of the blade is perfectly coplanar with the sole, but that's just by eye. To really get it dialed in, you're gonna have to put the plane to use. Now for this, I take a narrowish board, like 3/4 inch or so, and I take one full shaving only using the right-hand side of the blade. Then I'll leave that shaving on the right-hand side of the board, and I'll take another shaving using only the left-hand side of the blade. Then I can compare the two to each other to see what the difference is. Now, according to these shavings, I'm making a heavier cut on the right side, so that means the blade is lower on that side of the plane. I'll push the lever ever so slightly to the right, and I'll start the test all over again. Once you get shavings from the left and the right that are the same thickness, you're good to go. Now, write yourself a note to not touch that lever anymore, and then don't touch that lever anymore. So let's go back to the board I was working on in the beginning of the video. If the lever adjusts the skew of the blade and we want to unskew our beveled edge, here's how to do it the right way. Set the plane on the high side of the edge, but float it off the side so that you're only taking a really narrow cut. Depending on how badly out of square that edge is, you may have to make this same pass a couple of times. Then scoot the plane over slightly and make another slightly wider cut, focusing your downwards pressure on the high edge, specifically on the cut that you just made. Then just keep sliding over and taking passes until you end up taking a full width shaving. You might have to go through this a couple times. You might even go too far and end up having to correct it and go the opposite direction when you're done. It's just something you kind of get a feel for after a while. Mathematically, it would depend on the thickness of your cut and how out of square that edge is. But it'll also depend on how perpendicular you are to the board that you're working on when you take that first cut. But whatever you do, don't adjust that lever aside from initial setup. Once you skew it for, let's say, this job, you have to go through that whole process again before you start the next one. Otherwise, you'll be starting that next job with a skewed blade. On edges, that means bevels on everything you touch. And if you were to do that on multiple boards before you figured it out, that would be a nightmare. And a skewed blade on the face of a board means, at the very least, blade tracks. So set it up right and let technique get you through the rest. Thanks so much for watching, you guys, and I'll see you in the next video.